in every other field where somebody's life is at risk, in the medical field, in the aerospace field, they need a license to do what it is that they do. Mm-hmm. Medical surgeons need a license before they can just, you can't just wake up, say, I'm going to be a surgeon, take 2 weeks of classes and start cutting up people, right? You can't say, I'm going to be a pilot, take like a month of lessons and just start flying people, 500 people on a plane, right? If somebody's life is going to be at risk, if you could potentially take someone's life, you need a license to do what you do.
I watched Dick Gregan. He said something very interesting. He said, you're going to have to make these officers take out insurance like you do a doctor. He says, because then if they're culpable for their actions, you have to ask yourself, do you hate black people more than you love your family? Mm-hmm. Because if there's monetary or there's a risk that you could go to jail, those are some serious questions that you would have to ask yourself before you leave home.
Right? So starting to hold police accountable that way by requiring more from them would be one major step to move forward. That's one thing.
And
secondly,
we all can agree on that,
you and Jordan, you and I were having a conversation a couple of days ago where I believe I mentioned that we were talking about Jacob Blake and how he may have been having issues that day, mental health crisis, whatever it was. We don't know what was going on in his head. Yeah. And you brought up a good point saying we also don't know what was going on in the cop's head, right? So that we need to also think, well, the cop may have not been in his right state of mind, or he may have been flooded with a lot of BS media as well to perceive him as a major threat. My one issue that I would like to bring up with that, and I would like to propose that people start to think about, is that in a situation like that, where you now have police who are biased, police who are stressed, police who are already on edge, they shouldn't be at work that day. If I can't go to work with anxiety, or I can't go to work with depression, or I can't go to work with certain types of, like if I'm not fully myself, I can't be at work. Yeah. I'm not equipped enough to work.
The issue with that is that like you said, these people are supposed to protect lives and whatnot. So it's kind of like they have to suck it up and do what they gotta do. Kind of like if you go to the army, if you go to sign up, you're gonna be traumatized. It's gonna happen, right? But that's what you signed up. You're not gonna be like, I'm having a bad day today, I can't go to war.
I completely understand. Kind of thing, right? I completely understand. But the thing about the army though is that the army, there's a set number of people that join, right? There are maybe
even with cops, like there's a lot of people, right? And there's gonna need policing, right? So you can't just be like, I'm gonna take a day off because I'm not feeling it.
I completely get that you're not gonna be like, I'm gonna take a day off, I'm not feeling it. But I think you also do need both, like you said, whether it be psychologist or a mental health professional to accompany these police. I don't know whether they have this or not, but I do think they need to implement that into the actual stations themselves to keep police not necessarily in check, but to like keep their minds right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they have that. Like I imagine they do, but
I hope so.
Yeah, it's like you can't just be like, oh, like I'm not feeling it, because then who's gonna take your place if everyone's feeling shitty? Who's gonna go? Like it's you're gonna be stressed on that job. A lot of shit's gonna happen. Yeah, right. I think so. You can't just be like, I'm not, because everyone's gonna be like, I'm totally not.
Yeah,
feeling it.
But I think though that you want to go first? You can go first.
Real quick point. Just how people tell athletes to shut up and dribble. Look, hey cops, you sign up for this, do your job. Yeah. It's the same energy, not exactly the same point or the same job or the same pay. Yeah. It's people's lives at stake. You're just dribbling a basketball and shooting it, but you signed up for this. You know exactly what you're doing. Yeah. The famous life, you know exactly why you want to do it or what you got yourself into. So
a lot of them just kind of have to just go in with it and just be like, I'm kind of scared, but I have to do this. This is my job.
Yeah.
I understand the points that you guys brought up, and I think though that there needs to be a lot of regular mental health checks, because I honestly don't think that happens as much as it should, and like even just substance abuse check, because I've done some research in terms of like school projects and stuff, and I came to learn that like police actually have a high substance abuse problem. It's in their industry because of the amount of stress that they have to deal with, you know. And it's like, let's just say let's just say they don't get those checks on a regular, and a police who's an alcoholic turns up at a crime site where something is about to go down, and again, on instinct, shoots, right?
Yeah.
Would that still be the same case if he was sober-minded? We don't know, you know? So I think that, like, caring for them as well, because they are dealing with civilians, is a very important thing. But also, the fact that a civil servant in some states or countries or whatever can get paid up to $200K a year for not going into any sort of like professional schooling is mind-blowing to me. And I'm not saying they should lose that pay or anything, but I definitely think if that type of pay is there, the work needs to come behind it. And with dealing with these people and even just seeing the evidence of what's going on with the police system now, like, even if it was just like a college course, like not a college course, but a college program for policing or something, schooling needs to be like done so they can understand cultural things, historical things, and get that type of context, not just you're enrolling into, I don't know, let's say it was like a 28-week course and after that you do your physical assessment or whatever and you're good. Like that's not okay. It doesn't really make sense.
I think we need to start increasing the standard of policing. Like this isn't some little thing that we start picking random guys at the gym. It's like, oh, you could be a police, you could be a police. Like, no, these should be very high level intellectuals that are extremely physically fit. They should be looked at for different like mental issues that they could possibly have. I know they do all that, but it tends to be on a lower level. There's this thing that's actually, I can't remember exactly what the rule is in the police industry or policing. You literally can't have passed a certain IQ. Like, there's a test that they do, and you literally can't be smart. If you're too smart, you can't be a police officer.
Police officers aren't smart, right? And that's not me slamming them. That's facts, and it's on purpose. In the early 2000s, a New York appeals court ruled that cities have the right to reject applicants from joining police forces if, get this, if they scored too high on an intelligence test.
And it sounds like a joke, but seriously, search it up. I'm probably not wording it right, but it's along the lines of being too smart, you know?
I'm going to look it up and leave it in the link below.
Yeah, it's absurd. But I think in doing that, we could solve a lot of issues. Like, just looking at their character in itself. Like, there's a thing, accountability in the police industry is terrible. There's a lot of police that are doing grimy jobs on the side. Like, I had one friend that got arrested, and this happens all the time, especially in the hood. And so he got arrested for a robbery, and he had like a bag of like Xanax pills. And when he was arrested, somehow the pills disappeared. And this is like a bag of like 1,000 pills. They disappeared. He wasn't charged for having drugs on him. Nobody knows where it went. My friend didn't complain because saved himself from a charge. But this happens all the time. They'll be like, oh, I'll let you go if you give me the pills. It's more common than you think, you know. And I also saw another article about accountability on the hands of other cops, like seeing another cop do something bad and they just look the other way.
But then they get licked.
I swear they're unionized, aren't they?
Snitch,
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, that whole thing of like protecting your fellow comrade or your brother, like that's definitely a thing in that industry. And speaking up against another cop doing something wrong can be very risky for you. Like, I remember when George Floyd passed, there was a black cop that made a video talking about like how that should have never happened and all that stuff like that. Yeah, he was removed from service, and that's definitely a thing. Or even just like female officers, right? A lot of them are seen to be very hard-bodied, where they have to present themselves that way because to their male counterparts, they're already seen as weaker. So sometimes you see the female officers doing more brutal things than what the male officers would do. Like, for example, a rape case might occur and the female officer might start asking, are you sure that happened? Like, you know, like, was it maybe what you were wearing, whatever? And maybe the male officer might be like, I'm sorry that happened to you, and actually try and help out. You know what I mean? So those type of things are definitely a thing in the industry.
100%.
Police go through a lot and they deal with a lot, but they also do a lot, right? Just like you were mentioning. I mean, there are also cases of police actually pulling you over, And if they don't find anything, they plant something.
Exactly.
LAPD Chief Charlie Beck talking about this video that we broadcast exclusively last week, taken from an LAPD body camera that a defense attorney claims shows an officer planting this tiny bag of drugs in his client's wallet.
I did watch the broadcast, and what I saw on the tape was not dispositive in that it did not prove things one way or the other.
These things happen, right? Are they accounted for when we talk about the amount of people who are being arrested or wrongfully arrested? What is the percentage of black people that are arrested that were wrongfully charged, right? Or was a wrongful arrest? Nobody looks at those stats. They focus on the fact that there are so many arrests in the black community. There's so much crime in the black community. How many of those that are in jail are actually innocent?
And that's if it even comes up,
Exactly.
Most of those cases probably go unheard.
Exactly, right? So there's a whole lot to deal with. But like I said, finding ways to hold the police accountable, starting with a license, is one thing that I think we can all agree on as a positive push forward.
100%. The training, like you said.
Yeah,
more
the training, like you
intensive
said.
training, yeah.
If we hold them to the same standard that we hold surgeons and we hold pilots, because they all deal with lives, we could equally say, well, a police officer has to deal with the stress, so he has to go in. A pilot has to deal with the stress, but do you want to fly with him?
I think the problem is that, like, we need a lot of police. That's the thing. It's like we need it and we need it fast. So they kind of just go through the system where it's just like, all right, get in, get out, get in, get out, get in.
Yeah, especially now, because if you look at policing, it's very, very unstable right now. No, who's going to want to be a police officer?
Yeah.
Like, there are some deaths.
Yeah.
So
That's
I think
true.
that's the problem. It's like, how do we stop that?
How do we balance
We can't
that?
just like shut it off for a bit, because then that's going to be chaos, right?
Yeah.
So then,
So that, I think that's the problem. I think no one's really against that. It's just like, how do we go about that kind of thing?
personally, I know, even me, I actually grew up and the thought crossed my mind of, I want to be a police officer.
I thought about it.
Right?
I was watching Naruto and I was like, yo, technically these guys are like officers.
You know?
Yeah, even my teacher that taught us law or whatnot.
Yeah.
She's like, you should be a cop. I'm like, me?
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, my friend said that. I was like, yo, why don't you join the army? I was like,
It's funny, right?
If you really think about it, and this also has to do with a lot of what young men, not just black men, but young men in general are shown in terms of movies and media. We all want to be heroes to some extent, right? And the real life equivalent of that is police or the army or whatever, right? So for a lot of us, we do have the idea cross our minds before the reality check of, oh, this is dangerous. Oh, there's a lot of work towards it. Oh, there's a lot of bias in these. There are more problems than good. And if I see something, I can't say something. So what change can I really bring? So if we look at trying our best to reform the police system, like they're trying to do now, defund the police and allocate some of the funds to some of the mental health organizations and practices, and trying to look at where we're not holding them accountable all the way to make it easier for people to join police, but also make it safe enough for them to speak out when they see something happen